Hi, welcome to the Listen Up Grow podcast, your daily LGBTQ plus news podcast. I'm your host, Zach Randall-Freeman. Today is July 9th, 2026. There's a lot happening, so let's get right into it. Our first story is New Jersey signs a major win into law for trans and reproductive care. So let's start off with some genuinely good news. The New Jersey General Assembly passed new legislation on the last day of Pride Month that strengthens protections around gender-affirming health care, reproductive care, including abortion and IVF, and more. The bill is now headed to Governor Mikey Sherrill's desk, where it is expected to be signed. The legislation creates a new crime of interfering with reproductive health care, which under the bill explicitly includes care for people who are transgender. If signed into law, it would be the fourth-degree crime to harass or harm patients, providers, or staff or volunteers, or to block them from entering a healthcare facility. If someone is hurt during an interference, violators could face 10 years in prison and a $150,000 fine. The law will also protect providers from extradition to other states that have chosen to criminalize their practice. New Jersey crossed the finish line on June 30th, the very same day the Supreme Court issued its ruling in West Virginia versus PBJ case, curbing trans rights in sports. So while the Orange Convicted Felons administration was celebrating one attack, New Jersey was building a shield, and that is the energy we need. Our next story is fired EEOC commissioner drops lawsuit and the Orange Convicted Felon gains more power over their workplace rights. So this one is quieter news, but it matters. The fired and EEOC commissioner has dropped her lawsuit after the Supreme Court expanded the Orange Convicted Felon's power over federal agencies, giving him the authority to loyalist at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and further attack LGBTQ rights in the workplace. So let's be clear what the EEOC does. It's the agency that enforces federal workspace anti-discrimination protections, including, after the Bostock decision, protections for LGBTQ plus workers. When you stack the agency with loyalists who don't believe in those protections become meaningless on paper. This is exactly why November matters so much, so be sure to get out there and vote. Our next story is nearly half of Americans who left religion cite treatment of LGBTQ plus people. So here's a piece of data that makes me really think. Nearly half of Americans who have left religion cite the mistreatment or rejection of LGBTQ plus people as an important reason for walking away. That is a 9-minute read over LGBTQ Nation, and it's worth your full attention. The idea that so many people looked at how their church, their temple, and their faith treated queer people and said, no, I'm out, is validating and heartbreaking. Validating because it means people see us, heartbreaking because it means so many people experience that rejection firsthand. If you have left your faith because of how you were treated, because of how they treated queer people, you're not alone. If you stayed knowing the cost, that took you courage too. Next, the Orange Convicted Felons Supreme Court ruling gives him total control over the EEOC and what it means for us. So building on that former EEOC story, let's get a little deeper. A recent Supreme Court ruling gives the Orange Convicted Felon the authority to install loyalists at the EEOC, which advocates say will be used to further attack LGBTQ rights. The EEOC has already been gutted. Federal courts have noted that the agency's decision to stop investigating discrimination complaints based on gender identity is, in the judge's own words, deeply troubling, but ruled that courts lack the authority to review it. So the agency stops protecting you. The courts say they can't force it. That's the squeeze. This is part of the systematic dismantling. When institutions designed to protect you are handed to people who don't believe you deserve protection, that's when state-level wins like New Jersey's Shield Law becomes lifelines. Our next story is the Patriot Front showed up at Pride and a photo went viral. A photo of an encounter involving the white nationalist group Patriot Front went viral this week, adding to the wave of intimidation directed at Pride events this season. We don't need to give these people more oxygen than necessary, but we do need to name what they are. Domestic extremists who target the LGBTQ plus community, Their presence at Pride events isn't spontaneous, it's coordinated and intentional. It's happening in an environment where federal protections for our community are being stripped away one by one. Stay safe at community events, report suspicious activities, and keep showing up is still an act of resistance. So keep on doing it. Our next story is Alberta and the threat of Canadian separatism to LGBTQ plus people. So let's go global for a moment, because what's happening in Alberta, Canada is a story that deserves a spotlight. A major piece exploring what Canadian separatism could mean for LGBTQ people in Alberta was published this week, and asking the question, if Alberta separates from Canada, what happens to queer people then? Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has been borrowing from the anti-LGBTQ plus playbook in ways that should sound familiar, including legislation banning schools from flying any flag other than the Canadian or Alberta flag, and barring teachers from taking positions on what the government calls political or ideological issues, raising serious questions about whether a pride flag, a picture of a gay couple, or a visible queer presence in a classroom could get a teacher in trouble. For our queer community and our Canadian family, especially those living in Alberta, we see you, and this is a global fight, and we will keep reporting on to this as we get more details on this story. Who thought Canada would go that direction? Next, Heartstopper ends, and the finale film is almost here. And we have to end on something that gives us all the feels. After 10 years, July marks the end of Heartstopper, both on the page and on the screen. The final volume of Allison Osmond's beloved graphic novel series is out now, following Charlie's campaign for head boy and Nick's preparation for college. And the Heartstopper Forever film hits on July 17th. Heartstopper has been a light and a dark for so many queer kids and adults over the past decade, a series that centered queer joy, queer love, and queer community without trauma porn, without tragedy as a plot device, just two boys figuring out that they love each other, and that's all that matters, and that's all that they wanted to figure out. 10 years and what a run. It was such a great show, and I can't wait to watch the final. So thanks for listening to Listen Up Girl for Thursday, July 9th, 2026. If you've got something from today's episode, please subscribe or follow on Apple, Spotify, or whatever platform you're listening to, and leave us a rating and review. It only takes about 30 seconds, and it genuinely helps more people find us. Share this episode with someone in your life, and follow me on Instagram and YouTube at The Real Zach RE. And I'll be back tomorrow with more news. Take care of yourself, and see you back here tomorrow with the latest.